Michael Booth, great to have you on the iyarn podcast and also your show on Facebook. Sorry, mate, what's the name of your show?
Boothcast.
Boothcast. So where can people find the Boothcast?
Boothcast can be found on my Facebook page, Michael Booth, or it can also be found on your favorite podcast channel. If you go to anchor.fm/Boothcast, you can find it there.
Okay, fantastic. So this is exciting. I'm in my bedroom right now, which is the first time I've done this. So hopefully we don't have too many conk-outs. But mate, the way how we do it on the iyarn podcast first up is actually starting off with a bit of a quote. It's that you live by.
So my favorite quote at the moment is actually, "We don't rise to the occasion, we fall to our highest level of preparation."
Right. I really like that one. Where did you kind of come across that?
It was a negotiation book by Chris Voss, and he was talking about preparing to enter a negotiation, and that's the quote he used, and it just sort of resonated with me really well.
So tell me, where did you get into starting to read a negotiation book?
I don't know. I'm just really interested in negotiations, in talking to people, in communication. So I just started reading those books. Well, I actually don't read technically. I listen to Audible. So I listen to audiobooks, and when I'm driving or when I'm training, I find it's a really, really handy tool. So you feel like you're constantly learning.
Totally. One of the quotes that just comes to mind that's very aligned with that is a bit of a quote that the SAS use, which is the Swanbourne Barracks just around the corner where I grew up and where you live now in WA. They call it the 6 Ps. Prior preparation prevents piss poor performance. Yeah, and I love that one.
Yeah, that's pretty much a very, very similar one. Like, so that guy who came up with that quote is actually a CIA sort of FBI negotiator. So.
Oh, true. You've heard that one there already.
Yeah, I heard that one as well. Yeah, it's really, really good.
Deadly. So you've been having a few chats. So everyone who hasn't heard of Mike Booth, he's got his own platform at the moment, but your world's kind of shifted significantly. The last few years you've been on tour, traveling around the world globally, just casually being world champ SUP racer. Do you mind sharing some, bit of the highlights you've had over the last few years?
Sure. But yeah, basically the stand-up sort of stuff started back in 2015, just before I was kayaking, and then before that I was doing ocean ski racing and surf life saving. But the SUP sort of took control in 2016. I won my first world title there in Fiji, and then I've won 3 European tour titles, probably the biggest tour in our sport at the moment. I've won a distance race world title series with APP last year. I won the first ever ICF World Championship title last year as well. So, and then I won another world title in Hainan in China, distance race stuff. So sort of like an hour to an hour and a half of paddling, where sort of endurance is really, really important. And just been on tour for, I guess nearly 10 years now, when I first started sort of doing ocean racing, and then it's gradually got more and more as time has progressed. But yeah, this year is, I think for most people, is really sort of taking its control of your life, really. Like, you can't really do the things that you're normally able to do. And we just have to sort of find those different things that we can do at the times that we probably can't do what we would rather like to be doing.
Totally, man. And I appreciate you giving us that kind of quick 101 of your story.
Sorry, we lost some audio here. Back to it.
So where we first kind of connected was when I was kayaking, and it was more towards the back end of when I was kayaking, and you were kind of fresh in there. So I was like, I thought I was, I could at least sit in the kayak and not fall in, eh?
Yeah. It was a tough start, but I got there and eventually.
So do you mind filling in, what was your story like in elite sport? You kind of gone through the Queensland system as an Ironman, yeah? And then you kind of transitioned over there. Do you mind sharing, what was your story starting to be a bit of an elite athlete? Where did that all begin?
Well, being an elite athlete, I think, was something that I always wanted to be when I was growing up. I always loved sport. I loved training, and I loved really participating at the highest level. So in the juniors, like, I sort of made 5 state teams. I was in the Australian teams. I medalled at Aussies a lot. And I guess once I turned 18, I finished school and I moved up to the Gold Coast to join Northcliffe and sort of join that awesome training environment that they have there. And the goal at the time was to sort of make that Nutrigrain Ironman series, which was the pinnacle of the sport. And That didn't sort of work out. I actually had one of the trials where I was leading with Corey Hill, and we sort of got punched by a wave, and skis went in the air. And we went from like first and second to 17th to 18th, and the next couple of weeks we were sort of like a bit down on ourselves. Like, oh, well, that kind of sucks. Like we should have been in there. Like we had a perfect opportunity, but in the end, it was kind of like the best thing that ever happened to me. We took that sort of negative and made it a positive. We flew down to Sydney and did a surf ski race. I finished like 27th. I think it was a Fen Cup in Sydney, and Dean Garner sort of helped me get a boat. And then a few weeks later, it was the Dubai Shamal and the Hong Kong Dragon run at the time, and we decided that it would be a good idea to get over there. So initially I said no, and I borrowed some money off Dad, and we cruised over there and had my first international racing experience. And then from there on, it was all about like, how do I continue these experiences? How do I chase these dreams? And how do I get to travel and race and sort of live that sort of lifestyle? So I pursued that for a long time. At the same time, I was studying engineering. I did that for 2 years. It wasn't really for me. I didn't really see myself sitting in a cubicle in an office space, especially not through my 20s. I really thought that I had so many opportunities elsewhere to chase that I wanted to really pursue. And so I worked in the bar at Northcliffe and sort of lived on 20 grand a year and was trying to make it work. And so raced internationally, went to like South Africa, to Mauritius, to Tahiti, to America. I did 6-week, 12-week trips. And then now I'm doing on the SUP scene, like doing the 6 to 12 weeks in Europe. And
so hold back. What was that, just cutting in there, that transition from, the surf ski stuff, which is kind of where we first connected. And then there was like this big, was a huge transition, but a different sport. A lot of obviously parallels in the ocean. But what was that big kind of moment, that tipping point where you realised actually, SUP is my sport?
So I guess I'll go back a little bit more as well. Like when I was ocean ski paddling, I'd started kayaking, where I obviously met you down at the I think it was a South Australian training camp, and we sort of hung out there with like Scott Smith and a couple of those other guys. And I guess I did kayaking to get better at ocean ski paddling, and then I got better at kayaking and eventually like made the Australian team and the junior Australian team and raced in Szeged and Moscow in 2015. But around the same time, so my friend Damien Gulliver was lifeguarding with my brother on the Gold Coast, and he was starting up a SUP brand and was like, hey, like you guys, you should try it, to my brother. And when I heard of that, I was like, oh, can I come down and try it as well? Because I've been watching this video called Positively Kai at the time. And it was actually a series that Kai Lenny self-produced or produced with his sponsors. And I was watching that sport and I was like, I feel like that sport is a hybrid between surf ski paddling, Ironman, SUP, or whatever it is. Like, I feel like I've got all those skills. Like, how do I go do it? And so that was like, oh, there's an opportunity there. Let's go grab it. And after I went for a paddle, like Damien was kind of like, oh, you're actually like quite good on the stand-up. Do you want to have a crack at this? And yeah, from there I was like, oh yeah, for sure. Like, how do I get a ball? I always say yes. Like everything I say yes. I'm just like, I'll work out how to do it. Like it'll just happen, and like, it's just all that time, consistency and preparation and sort of giving your all to something. But when I started stuff, I was not very good. I did that. I remember doing my first ever SUP paddleback. It was 4 kilometers from Southport Spit to near where we were living at the time in Northcliffe, and I could not stand up for longer than 2 minutes. I could not control the board. I fell off a million times getting out. My feet would get sore, my legs would get sore, and that's when I really realized how much of I focused on my upper body, not my legs. And so yeah,
chicken legs, eh? Little
chicken legs, and like I had no stability through my hips or my core. Like, and I think that was something that really affected me in the team boats and the kayaking. But it was good to like sort of learn that yourself, and I just kept pursuing that dream, and then sort of it's moved into the space that we're in now.
Totally, and it's quite funny, hey, like this transition. Both you and I, aren't the tallest blokes going around, and you found the sport like as with a kayak, sometimes the longer arms can be seen. You got guys like Reece Baker with his big albatross arms that are like twice the length of our height, whereas us guys a bit shorter, that lower center of gravity. All of a sudden, do you feel that's a real advantage that you have?
Definitely. I think having shorter legs on the stand-up, as you say, like your center of gravity is lower, whereas like you've got something like a surf ski or a kayak where it is a lot about weight distribution, depending on like because like they're all displacement hulls. So when you're pushing them through the water, if you got a bit more weight, you got a bit more momentum through the water, whereas a lighter guy will sit higher and not be able to get that repulsion. Whereas because you're standing now, the taller guys their center of gravity is a lot higher, so they can't actually paddle on, say, a narrower board or a lighter board because they're a lot higher, so they're going to be more unstable. So it sort of brought it back. It's kind of like surfing. Like you look at a lot of the surfers, with the exception of a couple of guys, like they're all really short guys, like 5'8", 5'7". Is sort of like where you'll see a lot of those guys, like the Brazilians and Kelly Slater. But then you've got obviously the extremes where you got Geordie Smith, who's like 6'3". But just find the majority of those athletes are smaller, and I think stand-up paddling is one of those sports that does kind of favour the smaller athlete, which is great for me.
One of the really cool things that just picking up on your story, like that transition from, you know, a really supportive environment growing up as a kid, you go down to a surf club, you kind of thrown in, you got boards, skis, swim, surf skills, all these different things. Such a great way to live. That's why surf lifesaving has an amazing place in Australia. But then you kind of transition into surf ski paddling, you know, and you got these amazing guys. You've mentioned Dean Gardner, who also for me was just someone, just a top bloke. Yeah, mate, no worries. Yeah, hey, what comes around, swings around, comes around, whatever, we'll hook you up with a ski. And all of a sudden you get this little interest. You know, for me, I had these guys, Mark at Broadhurst, a guy, Andrew Stevens, James Knowles, Will Bird, Tom Bird, these and Tim Bird, sorry. And just like, no worries, mate. Yeah, come on the ski. But I had no idea how to tie a ski on my roof. It was embarrassing. You know, you got a 25 knot southwester, and I didn't know how to put in the ski. And this guy's an absolute glass. And that's what I love. Like, I think around a lot of ocean sports, you've got this like degree of camaraderie and mateship and community. Have you felt like that? Obviously, SUP's a bit more of a developing sport than some of these other more established ones, but is that really coming through in the SUP world?
I think ocean sports in general has a fantastic community. Like most people who are down there because they really want to be. Like it's sort of like, and you have like sort of like the older age groups between like the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, where these guys are going to work every day, but they're coming down and racing ski races because they love paddling with their friends. They love racing against their friends, and that community is amazing. I think SUP has that just as much or more than an ocean ski. But the thing that's probably different between SUP and ocean ski, because SUP is emerging and smaller, just because it's only been around for like 9 or 10 years, whereas surf ski has been around for 50 or so years, or paddling in general. There is that little bit of difference because you don't have the greats of the sport. You don't have the Dean Gardners. You don't have the Oscar Chalopskis, like those type of paddlers who have been around for forever and are still part of the sport. Whereas the guys who are the best in the sport are actually the guys you're racing against still, because there isn't that history. There isn't that sustained, because you like the guys who are older, like someone like Travis Grant or George Cronston, those guys have been really good in other sports like Varl, Outrigger, and then they've sort of transitioned across, similar to my story, but I'm obviously they're sort of like 35-ish, and I'm sort of 6-7 years younger than those guys, and they're sort of like the elder statesmen of the sport, but I'm sort of quickly moving into that space, which is really weird because I'm not even 30 yet.
Yeah, you're still a little grom.
Yeah, well, I think I am anyway.
So another thing I'd like to really touch on, like I think, you know, it's admiring from afar is around how you've really lifting this sport up as a whole. And I think it's really the entrepreneurial way, how like, you know, we're getting on this call Zoom. I want to learn how to record. I want to learn how to do all these different things. And, you know, all of a sudden your whole, essentially a lot of your livelihood, racing, paying the bills, traveling the world, the reason why you got into the sport in the first place. And now you're kind of pivoting in, oh, why not? I've got this great community, get it online. Where do you think that kind of real entrepreneurial spirit kind of comes from? Where, you know, is that something you've been brought up with, or?
I don't necessarily think it was something I was brought up with. I think I lived in a pretty traditional household where my mum and dad went to work. Mum was a school teacher and dad worked in a whole different host of different business opportunities, but always working for someone else. And I always like to take control of my own life. And whether, I don't know where exactly I'd learned that from, but I always learned that whatever time and effort I put into something, I usually get a bigger return than putting time and effort into something for somebody else. And that's the way that I've looked at most things. Like, I guess you may not have money, but you've got your time and your effort. So I can spend 12 hours on something. And if I think that that's a passion project, something like the boothcast that I'm doing now, I've got time and effort to put into that. And where that goes, I have no idea. But the community that I've been lucky enough to sort of surround myself with, and the people who comment on all my posts each and every time I do something, or who text me and sort of go, oh, can you interview this person or talk about this person? And it's pretty amazing that over time that you've sort of garnered all these relationships, but you don't realize how important they are and how much I enjoy actually telling other people's stories or talking stories inside a sport, because it really does bring up the value of the sport and bring up the interest in the sport, whether that's externally or internally. Like, I just really love telling stories, and it's something that I'm really, really lucky to be able to do. Like in this day and age, like I was planning to do interviews like all around the place. I remember interviewed Dean Gardner in like 2017, like going back, and I hated editing, and it's amazing that now I can sit in my bedroom and be talking to you and be recording at the same time, and we're able to share this conversation out there with everybody.
Totally, man. I love that. And I think, the new way of work, I think everyone's going to be having to be more agile with what they do. I think this time now, is what you say, is really bringing up a lot of light around, it's really, the energy, effort will generate the rewards you do. And that's becoming a lot more front of mind, as obviously a lot of people are getting out of the work and out of jobs, and how do they bring that mentality, whether it's a SUP athlete or, as an accountant, financial planner, whatever it is, how do you have that agile kind of way of thinking? So what we kind of like doing now, I might quickly share some of we did iyarn. So for some of your viewers out there who probably haven't heard of iyarn, iyarn is a platform where that essentially I created as a result of doing some work in some Indigenous communities. I learned about a word called iyarn, and iyarn is essentially your body, your emotion, your mind, your spirit, your everything. And after I got culturally adopted by the Ijai family in the Bardi clan up in the northwest of Australia, when I got adopted, people no longer said, "Oh, Lockie, how are you going?" They said, "Oh, Binjali, how's your iyarn?" And it was disrespectful to my family, my community, my culture, Bardi culture, if I wasn't truly honest and deep and with them. So I was like, shit, that's powerful. All the times you may be down the race. "Oh, how you going?" "Yeah, good, mate. Yeah, good. Yeah, good. Yeah, mate. Yeah, it's good. Tough times, COVID, tough." But then how you actually, as a buddy, creating safe spaces to kind of really go in and the nitty gritty of what's happening with life. So I kind of created this platform, iyarn, to essentially facilitate those deeper conversations that you may have with your friends, peers, loved ones, and, even colleagues at work. So in this intention with the podcast, it's kind of like, I've asked you to kind of create your own iyarn. I've just got a picture here. It's actually an app that people can find. But this is a check-in that you did last week, and then it's actually transitioned to another check-in this week. So firstly to that, these are the areas, you've chosen these areas. You've got a fair few here. Generally what we like doing is kind of focusing on some of the highlights. So, these ones of, you've got energy, family, finances, happiness, mental health, personal development and relationships. They're all pretty strong. So, do you mind just sharing some light around how do you kind of keep them strong? Are there any kind of tools and techniques you do to keep them strong?
Yeah, so when you asked me to make an iyarn wheel, I think I looked at the setup of the whole thing. I think you can put maximum of 18 things on there, and I was like, well, why don't I try and do as many as I can? And so I guess for me, like, there's a lot of ones there that are pretty similar, like personal development, like, I don't know, like exercise challenges, career, like they're all sort of like similar, because obviously like my exercise is my job and I'm trying to like sort of pursue those sort of things. So with personal development, I'm just trying to, at the moment, trying to pivot and change the way I do things, because I obviously cannot do the things that I would normally do. I'm not training, I'm not traveling, I'm not planning for races or organizing clinics and all that sort of stuff. So when I looked at this, I was like, okay, so where's my personal development? And at the moment, it's like focusing on following passion projects, like doing the Boothcast, and focusing on different learning things that I can learn about. Like, I'm really interested in financial planning at the moment, so I'm looking into potentially studying that. I've got a business degree, so I can move on top of that. And then obviously working on my business as well, like with my booth training and paddles and all that sort of different stuff that I've sort of pivoted to throughout my career. I'm trying to really work on it. Like, normally you work in the business, but I'm now trying to work on the business. So that sort of comes down to the career and the challenges and trying to really focus on it. So at the moment, I think it says 5 for career. And I think that's because I'm really uncertain as to where that's going to go. Like, if you look at, if I said this in December, I would have said this was like my career's going 10 out of 10. It was going unbelievably, but you get to March, April this year, and it's just all completely changed.
Totally. And I guess, if you go this one that you've done more recently, like this one just here, you could see that the things that have shifted a little bit. Exercise is still a bit low here, mate. So talk to me. I see you doing a bit of a couple of programs for people to tune into around training programs?
Yeah, so I've been coaching people for now, probably 3 or 4 years. And that just came as well, like with that entrepreneurial thing, like people would text me and go, "Hey, Michael, would you be interested in coaching me?" And I was like, absolutely. Like, as I said before, like I always say yes. And so I started developing that. And then as I've gone through, I've gradually increased that. I've made it more streamlined. I've got like a community on booth training now where like everyone shares their sessions each day. Like I've got athletes like all around the world, like in South America, the United States, all through Europe, like, and it's been quite incredible to teach different people and help them become the best version of themselves. So exercise for me at the moment, I think, as I said, 5.3, because I'm not doing what I would normally do. So like if this was 3 weeks ago, before the COVID thing really knocked out basically my whole year, I would be in 10 out of 10. Like I did like, I don't know, 15 to 18 sessions that week. Like I was right into it, back into full program, 4 gyms, like 6 SUP paddles, couple of ski paddles, like, you know, like really like running everything. And now it's like, okay, well, I probably don't need to do as much, but I need to keep training. So, and that's sort of why I've given it a sort of a 5 out of 10.
Totally. And I guess, you know, one of the next things, the big intention of iyarn, like all this, and I really appreciate you sharing this publicly, like generally people don't really share their personal iyarns publicly like you are. But I think, you know, through being vulnerable with your friends, with your community, that builds connection. And, you know, obviously you know, the journey ahead for you is not going to be easy. But I think, you know, what I hear is you've got a real resilient mindset. And I feel like maybe you've had another experience in your life where you may have been, you know, exposed and felt quite vulnerable and very challenged. Is there another time where you felt essentially as exposed as you are kind of now with your work and things like that you may want to share some light on?
I think everything that I've done since I've left school, I've really taken risks. I've never been a person to sort of go, "Oh, no, I won't do that because it may not work out." I've always been the person who's just gone, "I'm going to do it and I'm going to see what happens." And whatever happens, I'm actually chasing the things that I'm passionate about. And if it works out, that's fantastic. If it doesn't, I'm not going to think, "Oh, geez, I wish I went back when I was 23. I kept doing Ironman instead of doing surf ski and all that sort of thing." Like I sort of made these decisions that were hard decisions, and financially, like I remember when I did that Dubai Shimala and Hong Kong Dragon run, I had like no money, like $0. Like I was living week to week, like, and I was just like, in my gut, and I think intrinsically, like, you know, that in your heart and in your soul, like, you know, that this could be a good thing for you. And every time that I've said no to that feeling, it's never worked out the way I wanted it to. So I've always said yes. And that was a really good thing. So I borrowed money from Dad and I went and did it. And it's the same thing with engineering. I remember sitting in classes at Griffith University there on the Gold Coast. And I hated driving to uni. I thought that was wasting my time. I was wasting like an hour and a half of my day traveling to university to sit there for one lecture and then drive home. And it wasn't really working out for me. And I knew for like a year that I didn't really want to do it. And I sort of started like failing subjects and just like not turning up to classes and not studying. And it just got to the point where I was just like, okay, well, let's just try and pivot. You want to do something else. Let's go do that. So I've always left myself pretty vulnerable with my decisions. But I've always known within myself that I can achieve whatever I put my mind to.
So you say, just kind of unpacking that for myself, because I know a lot of young people, you know, that phase of like late teens, early 20s, or even late 20s, like figuring out, shit, what do I really love doing? Was it the thing that did you know in your early 20s, what was it? Was it love being in the water? What was it?
I think I love sport, and I always have, ever since I was a little kid. Like I was always the kid who trained the longest, who was always out there at dark catching waves on his prone board down at Blacksmith when I was at Swansea Belmont. And it just never changed. Like I just always loved being in the ocean, but I also loved doing any other sport that I could get my hand on. Like I had to try triathlon. Like I think I made a state team, but I ended up pulling out because I had Aussie titles at the same time. And like cross country, school swimming. I think I played soccer for a long time. And yeah, I just loved challenging myself and actually racing. And I really enjoyed racing and trying to better myself against my competitors, because that was just what drove me. Like every day I get out of bed, I'd try and be the best I could be, and the best I could be hopefully would be the best on the day. So yeah, just constantly just trying to drive yourself. And I think for kids looking at this and watching and trying to work out what they want to do, I think it is a lot about your passions. Like, follow your passions, follow your dreams. Like, don't think that, oh, because somebody says you can't do it, like, you're always going to have naysayers. You're always going to have people who are going to put you down and say, no, you can't do that. Like, nobody does that. Like 1 in 100,000 people get to do that. But it's like, well, hang on, like, I can be one in 100,000 people. Like, why not? There's not many people out there who've been able to do what I've done, like in sport. Like, I've been able to make a career out of a very, very minority sport, and I've been very, very fortunate to do that. But as they say, you make your own luck. So for any kids out there watching, like, just chase your dreams and be consistent and persistent with what you want to achieve.
Man, I love that. I think it's a really good way to kind of wrap up the first interview on the iyarns for Michael Booth, mate. So what's, I guess there's a fair bit of uncertainty moving, in the week on week. We don't know what's happening week on week, but, so what are some of the consistent things in your life that that you just can't go wrong with? And that could be a bit of inspiration for some people before we wrap it up.
I think the most important thing is your family and your close friends. I think that's something that you really need to focus on. Like, obviously my relationship with Christy is like always really strong, and we're really able to talk to each other about anything. And I think you need to really have that person. Keeping your family safe at this time, I think is extremely important. Like, making sure everyone's doing the right things, getting the right advice, but not buying into the hysteria of the media. Like, just staying within your own mindset and not reading too much. I think that's something that I made a mistake of early on. I was trying to really like read everything, and it's like, no, just find a government website, get the stats and focus on that. And then going forward, just trying to stay positive. Like, I know exercise for me is something that I've learned over the past few weeks is something I have to do. Like, if I don't go exercising once a day, my mental and physical well-being is really, really affected. And I think getting up, doing that 30 minutes of exercise in the morning, or going for a paddle, going for a run, or doing that home workout session is something that you really need to do, because it narrows your focus. It releases the endorphins, and it gets you kick-started for the day. And I think lastly, like, just don't think the world's against you. There's always opportunities. There's always ways to pivot, and there's always things we can do that's going to better our lives. So even though it might seem all doom and gloom for some people at the moment, there's another door to be opened down the track.
Mate, 100%. I think it's a fantastic way to finish up on, mate. Thanks so much for having a yarn and getting a bit vulnerable.
No worries.
Cheers.
Thanks for having me on.